was wondering if you're talking about me or someone else. But thank you so much. And you're destined for greatness. You'll be some high-level elected person because no one has a name like you, that's for sure. It's one of the most important things in public office when you're running for office, is name ID. I was going to talk a little bit of how I came to get involved with politics. I grew up in a small town in North Jersey. And in the sixth grade, somebody came to me and said, you know, John, when you're 22, you should run for town council. So I did. Everybody, I knocked on all the doors. We had not a scientific method of door-to-door like today. We know who votes, who doesn't vote. We know who's registered, how they're registered, and what particular races they voted. So I went to pretty much every house in Hackettstown. Everyone told me they were going to vote for me, and I lost. So I ran when I was 22 and lost, and I came back the next year and won. And frankly, every office I've ever held, I ran for once, I lost, and I came back and won. Ran for council twice, ran for mayor once, lost, then won. Same thing with Freeholder, and same thing with the assembly. So don't quit. Just don't quit. I mean, I was lucky enough to grow up in a great town in the community. The stuff with the rescue squad is a great way to help out. It was a very fulfilling thing, which I stayed long enough to be a life member of the organization. Being a councilman at 24, I won at 23, but at 24 was a great learning experience. I'll never forget. One of the older guys, he was like 36, puts his arm around me and said, listen, kid, don't say too much. Ask questions, listen, vote. When you're here a while, you can talk more. And that was the best advice that anyone ever gave me for being in office. Because when you're new to anything, it's better to stay back, listen, and learn, and then grow into the position as many of us could do and be successful at. I've been blessed to have such a wonderful opportunity to have this experience, going from councilman to mayor to then freeholder, and then I got demoted to the assembly in 2009. But it's been a tremendous experience for me. I still get goosebumps when I walk into the chambers. Literally, it's a beautiful place to work. Tonight I'm going to talk about how we see things as Republicans in New Jersey, and where some of the disagreements are. I don't mean to say that New Jersey is a bad place. We live in a great state. We have everything. We have beaches, we have mountains, we have beautiful farmland. But New Jersey is notoriously expensive to live in, and affordability is becoming more and more a problem. It's difficult for businesses, the rules, the regulations, the tax structures. There's just so many things. So I'm going to kind of retort some of the governor's speech, if I may. Believe me, as I know the governor, you wouldn't want to meet a nicer person, but I just don't agree very much with him on policy. There's nothing personal about this at all. If I could just say this, the state of our state politics is one-party rule. Bills move quickly without much thought and no transparency. Sometimes legislation gets passed that we have to go back and do fix-up bills. It happens time and time again because sometimes we'll say, while the bills are coming up, we really need to change this in this way, and then later on we stop and we make the bill the way it should have been in the first place. In the governor's State of the State address, he left out a lot. Taxes and spending have increased by $16 billion in the first 5 years of his terms as governor. It's nearly 50%. But quite frankly, not very many of our state's problems have been fixed. In fact, in some regards, they've gotten worse. New Jersey still ranks last in most of the significant categories. We have the highest property taxes. We live in the worst place to start and own a business. Financial watchdogs call us a sinkhole state with the worst finances in the country. And national problems are often worse here, like crime and inflation. The cost of living has also skyrocketed because of tax hikes. Our schools are still underfunded, and with pandemic learning loss, we've set our children back several years in their learning. Property tax relief is really non-existent. Real property tax relief means taxes go down. Whose property taxes have gone down? But they've still gone up under this governor. In the past 2 years, more than average since the state implemented the 2% cap. School taxes have increased just about dollar for dollar with funding increases because towns take the money and run. Take S2, for example. There was a bill S2. And it was a good bill because what happened was the previous governor, if I have one criticism, there's a few with Governor Christie, was he didn't, the aid was supposed to follow the student body population by enrollment, and he never cut any aid from any schools a little at a time. He left everyone whole. And we weren't properly funding school districts that had enrollment growth properly. So then S2 passes, and it's equalizing the aid over a period of years. What happens is, in that period of time that the school districts didn't have proper funding for their increased enrollment, they had to raise property tax at the local level. So they were overtaxed at the local level. Next thing you know, millions of dollars of aid comes into that district, and I can tell you this from my town, with no provision that once you get to adequacy or some sort of fair level, some of that money should have gone back to cut the tax levy. And that was a mistake. S2 should have had a provision that if you're overtaxing at the local level, some of that money should have gone back to the local levy to cut taxes. What happens is, and I called the superintendent up first time we got some extra money. I said, listen, Mr. Superintendent, you're going to get more money because of S2. Do you think maybe you could cut the tax levy for the local property taxpayer? I get, well, we can add this program and we can do this. So what got lost in the translation of that money was the local property taxpayer. But we really need to have a significant solution to property taxes, and we tend not to. That also works with the energy receipt tax at the municipality level. The state has stolen $1 billion something of that money, and it gets spent at the state level. And one of the bills we have would restore that money to each municipality with the provision that the levy would be cut, and finally do some real cutting of local property taxes. The ACRA program is more of a temporary Band-Aid. We've seen them before. We've seen tax rebate programs, and eventually they either fizzle out or their money is taken and used somewhere else. And there's nothing baked in the cake for a long-term solution to property taxes. It's just like, here it is now, and even though it was approved in June, people still haven't seen a dime of it. They have to wait till May. And I know that it's an election year, and it makes sense to keep it fresh in people's mind when it comes back. But the reality is, the money's in the bank now. People need the money now. It should be those checks should have been going out within 30 days of the completed application, and they're not. People are having a difficult time applying for it. They're not able to. In fact, they had to extend the deadline to get your application in. It costs more money than actually gets back into the property taxpayers' pockets. If we were to cut taxes, there's no program necessary to administer it. There isn't a single person whose finances improve from being taxed more. A lot of times when you go to school, the focus is society. Society is made up of individual people, and individuals benefit from keeping more of their money and having less expensive products. That makes society better because the people who comprise our society are better off. Human history is a story of big government and powerful individuals taxing more and people being poor. The American experiment is to do the opposite, and that is why our country was so successful in the past. 6 years in a row, And 9 of the past 10 years, New Jersey has been rated as the worst place to have a business. This is one reason New Jersey's economy consistently falls behind the nation and most states. Our taxes are too high, our regulations are too restrictive and costly. We need to cut back on that and let business owners build and grow New Jersey. One of the things Governor Murphy failed to mention in his speech, in his State of the State message, that second quarter GDP was negative in New Jersey, and they had a big bounce in the third quarter. He didn't take credit for that reduction in GDP growth. He only took credit for the good news of the following quarter, appearing to be so high when it was really more of a bounce off the negative quarter we had before. The states with economies that have grown the most on average are those with the lowest taxes and friendliest business environments. Pennsylvania recognizes that and is cutting their corporate business tax now. It'll be cut in half. And also New York State, I believe, is doing the same thing. And these are Democratic governors that are doing these things. It could be done here too. And here's a good example. North Carolina has parallels to New Jersey. When North Carolina reformed their CBT in 2013, the same year we did our economic development plan in New Jersey, they did it by cutting the corporate business tax from 6.2% to 5.2%. And as revenues grew, they cut it again. And that happened over and over. And today it stands, I believe, at 2.5%. And 14 months ago, they wrote a bill that in 8 years, they would have no corporate business tax in North Carolina at all. So where are the jobs going to go? You know, we have an economic development authority in the state that hands out money. I think 400 of New Jersey's 937,000 businesses receive something through EDA. It's a very narrow band of businesses. And I'm not suggesting that we could fade to zero, but if we could cut and become more competitive, not only in the region, but in the country, where we're situated between New York, Philadelphia, the turnpike should be bustling with business and have more jobs here in New Jersey. Sometimes companies, they don't out and out leave New Jersey, but rather than expand here, they'll co-locate in a state like North Carolina. Pretty easy to understand. If you can go there and keep the money in the business, you can hire more people and have a bigger business in North Carolina. They are killing us with job out-migration. Another thing that happens, we probably spend $225,000 on a 3-year-old to senior in high school education now at the local level. I'm glad that you guys are going to school here because you're not going to North Carolina and see what it looks like there. But sometimes some of our young people that we've invested in do go to school in North Carolina or other states in the union, and they realize it's less expensive to live here. I can get a job at a company that's either located here in New Jersey and also there, make a similar salary, but keep more money in my pocket so I can have a better life for my family, and they make decisions to leave New Jersey. So this investment we've made in that student through the years, poof, goes to benefit another state. The corporate executives are not stupid. They know where it's best and how best to run their businesses. Our corporate business tax currently is 11.5%, which is the highest in the country. And that's with a 1 3/4% surcharge, which is set to expire. We should have accelerated that expiration. We would still be at 10 3/4. We really need to figure out how to do better and be more competitive in the region. Both New York and Pennsylvania are cutting with Democratic governors, and we're not even talking about going below 10 3/4%. It's going to start having a bigger impact because, frankly, we compete with other states for jobs and businesses, and we have to become more competitive here. This system simply is not sustainable for our state. They're cutting taxes and revenues are rising. It's a pretty good model. New Jersey's bad economy leads to more debt and worse state finances. A nonpartisan watchdog called the Truth in Accounting has labeled New Jersey a sinkhole state and routinely ranks New Jersey as the state with the worst finances. Democrats can't stop spending, which means more taxes and borrowing. The headline always tells a story that state debt is getting refinanced and we are saving money. They don't often criticize this administration for what's really happening. And the fact is, you just simply can't borrow your way out of debt. Say that we accelerated payment on one debt while we borrowed $4 billion during the pandemic. We're just churning money, and we're really not making significant progress to cut debt. That is a death knell. It is a very difficult thing to get out from under if we keep borrowing more and more. The governor says he's paying down debt, but he's not. Most recent state financial report showed that long-term bonded debt has increased by $44.4 billion, 21% increase to $248.6 billion overall obligations that the state has. Pension and health benefit debt increased by $4.4 billion and $36.1 billion, respectively. Altogether, debt increased by $84.9 billion. The report also showed the state had a net position of negative $216 billion, more than 4 times the state budget. This is not a good practice. We simply, even in our own houses, we wouldn't do this. We wouldn't keep borrowing ourselves to the point where, we were spending the kind of money on debt service we are. In fact, each taxpayer owes $58,700 to pay off that debt. And New Jersey is the only state in the nation in worse financial condition, like to tax a lot and spend other people's money irresponsibly, including Connecticut, Massachusetts, Illinois, and Hawaii. National trends like crime and inflation aren't any better here in New Jersey. Despite having some of the strictest laws in the nation on law-abiding gun owners, there is just as much murder in our cities than any other state. Car thefts are just as bad. Drug addiction is just as bad. And nothing government has tried to do has stopped it. It's an unfortunate reality, but trying the same thing again and again and expecting a different result is insanity. We really need to take a good hard look at our urban centers and other parts of our state and really do things that's going to help, people live better lives. It's unfortunate the type of spiral that we've been in the last several years in New Jersey. Inflation is hitting New Jersey harder because our state was already so expensive. Inflation has increased the annual cost of living in New Jersey by nearly $9,000. According to federal estimates. Worse, New Jersey's tax code doesn't protect people from inflation. It takes advantage of people during times of inflation by taxing them more. That is how New Jersey's tax code is designed. I'll get into that in a bit. Republicans have proposed to protect people from inflation, but Democrats continue to ignore us. For 7 years, we have pushed to ensure that people don't end up with a higher income tax rate because they get raises in response to inflation. It's called inflation indexing, which most states with an income tax do, and the federal government has done since 1986. We have also pushed for rebates to help people pay for groceries so they don't have to choose between fruit and a vegetable or wake up in the morning thinking, how or what are they going to eat today? One-party rule has prevented those common sense and in other state bipartisan solutions. We have a bill that would index the tax brackets for inflation back to the year 1990. And if a couple were earning $110,000 a year, that would save them about $1,600 a year in taxes, which would be a permanent reduction built into the tax code that would help people forever, and then keep indexing for inflation like the federal government does. If you were making $40,000 20 years ago, it's probably $75,000 now. You're in a higher bracket, paying more tax on a dollar that's has less value. So this it's no wonder our revenues are up the way they are. The reality is, paying more taxes on a dollar that's worth less than it was 20 years ago, because the tax brackets have not been adjusted for inflation over a period of time. So before inflation, Governor Murphy's taxes raised the cost of living by $17,500. Now families with a household income $4,000 more than the state average and $22,000 more than the national average household income qualify for Section 8 housing. That's a fact that we really should be thinking about and working on. A federal program to help that would help low-income families, but we shouldn't have to put our people, because of the tax code, in that position. They shouldn't be paying the taxes they're paying. Those families are upper middle class in America, but the governor and the Democrats in the legislature have turned them into low-income families here in New Jersey, and it's just a matter of the math. They really should accept that change. I'd much rather see that and deal with the corporate business tax than there's some rebate program that costs money to operate, and it goes to a very narrow band of the population and does nothing for business either. So that also affects education and learning loss. The connection between income and educational outcomes are indisputable. Closing down schools for 2 years led to a drop in test scores that erased 7 years of progress. Notably, the largest drops were in places with the lowest household incomes. If the state continues to cause financial problems for people who should be living comfortably, it's going to be even harder to recover from that learning loss. Republicans have been successful in getting solutions passed on learning loss, but our economic solutions are still ignored. Our plan rolls back inflationary costs levied on income taxpayers who are paying more than ever. I spoke to dealing with the tax brackets. There's also we would like to eliminate the $50,000 tax bracket for joint filers, which creates a marriage penalty that's built into the tax code that disproportionately affects low-income and middle-class families. It's a simple thing. We just have to change that one line. So we're making suggestions. It's not like we're not offering some alternatives here and things that we could do. Even if it's not all of them all at once, we could pick the most impactful solutions and start implementing them before we throw more and more people into poverty. Also, we'd like to see the renter's deduction increased to 30%, saving the average tenant over $2,000. By comparison, it costs a third less than the anchor program, but provides 4 times the help. The anchor program gives a renter a $450 break. And we don't know if the anchor program would be 1 year or if it'll sustain. We still haven't seen a dollar of the money that's sitting in the bank right now when people really could use the money. That's their tax money in their pockets to help themselves. We're lucky we have this warm weather this winter, or people's heating bills would be killing them. We should gradually lower the corporate business tax from where it is at 11.5% and get it somewhere lower. We'd love to see it go down to 2.5%, because I think that we believe that this would create a real economic boon in New Jersey. And then we wouldn't need too many EDA programs with the overhead and the cost that it takes to take your money or businesses' money and then give it to certain few, everybody gets a break. I can't think of a better incentive than all businesses being able to rise and do better and employ more people and pay more taxes here in New Jersey. We also need to fully fund schools and ensure that school funding does lead to lower taxes. We are working on a bill that would rewrite the school funding formula. And if we are able to implement that, and we have it's roughed out, I have a draft, but I'll give you a sneak peek. If more aid goes to the school districts and they are above adequacy, anything above adequacy must be cut from the local property tax levy. We're never going to do anything with property taxes if we don't start making significant changes. To just say we only went up 2.5% or 3% or 4% is not a good enough answer. It's difficult to make that property tax payment. It's not based on your income. It's based on the value of a property. So who's going to want to invest in a better house if this gets worse and worse? These tax cuts have already been paid for by taxpayers who endured the past 20 years of relentless tax hikes. Real affordability means cutting taxes so people and businesses actually pay less, and not just the people and businesses that are considered worthy by government officials. Every person and business deserves and needs a tax cut that would actually address affordability and make our state, economy, society, and residents better off. I'm pretty close to the end here, but I would just say we can't keep this trend. We hear about affordability constantly, and until we start taking some steps to find ways also to cut spending, because we're a mile wide and an inch deep with services in New Jersey. We start programs and we walk funding away and start another program and we leave it to be paid somehow else. We really need to start being more disciplined, either start eliminating some of the things we do or just don't add new programs until we catch up and make things more affordable. We have a lot of stuff in New Jersey, but we really need to find a way to get people out of poverty. We don't want to see generations of people growing up in Section 8 housing and never having an opportunity to escape that trap. We really need to find a way to be disciplined. The state has been quite undisciplined in the way it's added new programs without properly funding the ones that are there already. And also, the money that comes in from certain funding sources should go to what it's meant for, rather than spending it somewhere else on something we may not be able to afford. Pretty simple, like we do at home. I'm sure your parents tell you that, look, we can do this, but if you want to do that, do two things. Go get a job, you can go get it, or we just can't do it. Or we're going to not do this, and we'll go do that. There's a budget to live within, and we have frankly failed in many ways as a state to properly make sure we're managing your tax dollars correctly. And that is where I'll end. I don't know how I did on time, because I didn't time this, but I meant to keep track, but I can always talk too much.
In case you needed it.
I was looking. I was
sorry. Thank you. Let's have a round of applause. So, sir, we have a few questions here, and we've got a little bit of time. They're all over the place, so I tried to organize them as best we could. But let's begin with just political ambition. Why do this? Given the hostility and negativity of politics today, the constant push to raise money, the power of special interest groups, why should anyone today consider running for political office?
I don't want to give up. We should never want to give up. We should want to keep fighting to make it better. And the biggest difference between us is we want to see you be free, keep your money, be less restricted by government. And we don't want to be government that says, okay, we're going to give you this, and you become reliant. And if we don't give it to you, if we give it to you, you should feel like you owe us something. It's your money. You should keep it. But the point is, I think it's still worth the fight. I think the country's worth the fight. I think the state is worth the fight. The local level is worth the fight. And when I mean fight, I mean the debate on the issue. I can say this. I serve with 79 other people in our house, and I like every one of them. There's nothing personal about this. There's something else to keep in mind. This is business. This is an honest discussion of how we see things, and we disagree. But hopefully as we push each other, and we're getting closer, we picked up a bunch of seats recently, so we're a little closer to a majority, which I don't think is a bad thing for the state to have some balance. There is hope, and maybe we're not right at everything, but it's been a long time of one-party control, and to have like a difference of a different opinion, the closer we get, the more we come together. But I would not. I would go. I would do it. I would do it. I wouldn't spend 43 years getting where I got. I'd go right to Congress or something.
You were talking about getting closer. Part of that involves a discussion about the 2023 elections, when we have the entire legislature up. Now, typically in New Jersey, we see just a few competitive races for the legislature in November, as most districts are either safely Democratic or safely Republican. So, sort of two parts of the same question here. What's the Republican path to the majority? What are your top targets in the legislative elections? And on the flip side, where are Republicans going to expect to be on the defense? Where are the Democrats going to try and you're going to have to protect your incumbents?
Well, I'll start with defense, because that's the order of my priority. If I go backwards, I'm not going forward too well. So in 2021, we picked up 6 seats in the Assembly, and 2 of the seats are in District 11, which is kind of northern Monmouth County, northeastern Monmouth County. We won by hundreds of votes. Not thousands, hundreds. And we have 2 really, really good members, Kim Mulder and Marilyn Paperno. And they're working hard, they're doing a great job, and we're gonna work our tails off to protect them, because they're new members, they have new ideas, and they really have been impactful on the process. So that we must work. District 3 is another one we're gonna keep our eye on, because we have the senator here and the assemblywoman. I see Beth Ann is here. Good to see you. You snuck in while I wasn't looking. How did I miss that? It's good. So, I mean, obviously, we won some districts that people didn't expect us to win. But I think we're not winning as much as they're losing, because of people are catching on that we need to take a different approach. And it's very evident in this part of the state that people are looking at things like we really need to do differently. So there are areas that obviously we're competing. Again, not personal, nothing against any person who serves in any district, but there are districts that are more competitive now than they were before this new map. We just went through redistricting. So very near and dear to this area is District 4. That's one that's obviously something that we're going to look at. Some others in Bergen County, 36, 38, Somerset, where we used to have 16, and even kind of looking around the edges in 14 in Middlesex. So they're not Middlesex, Mercer, sorry, I said that wrong. There are areas that we have to go on the offensive. You know, we're in this to win the majority, just as the majority is in it to keep their majorities. You know, the speaker and I have discussions, and we get it. It's competition, but the more sometimes we compete, the sharper we get, the tougher we get. So, again, not personal. I like everyone, but there was times they were taking seats away from us, and it wasn't personal. They loved us, but our people went home. So it's just a fact of how it works in politics.
Right now, the Republican National Committee is meeting to talk about its future. And so we had a couple questions related to the former president. Donald Trump has announced he is running for president in 2024. Is this a good thing or a bad thing?
Let me just say this. I'm focused like a laser on the legislative elections. What happens with the president, I believe that the races that we have in 2023 are so important. You really need to think of what's been happening on the ground in New Jersey and what we have to offer and what our new members are doing and how important that is. a lot is going to happen between now and 2024. We don't even know ultimately how many people are going to get in, or who will be the nominee. Let me just say this: former president had some great policies and was pretty good for the country. His style was rough. And I think I'll just leave it at that. So we'll see what happens. We have a lot of our bench is much deeper, believe me, than the Democrats are. I mean, if you have Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, Rick Scott, I could tick them off, half a dozen of them, or President Biden, Kamala Harris, and I'm trying to think of who else. But our bench is much deeper. So I want to wait and see how this field shakes up. But let's go to the next question. I'm done with that.
You're done with that. Okay. I got a follow-up, but all right, we'll leave it at that for now.
Yeah, you can follow up.
Okay, so let me get to the part, because the fact is you are a leader. You're not just an elected Republican. You're the leader of the Republicans. And so you have to deal with issues that relate to primaries, that relate to Republican on Republican debates over the future of what it means to be a Republican, which we've had a little bit here in New Jersey. Other states have had much more dramatic and high-profile kind of fights along these lines. So the question is, nationally, what's the future of the GOP look like? Is the future of the Republican Party more aligned with Trump's brand of republicanism, what people are calling Trumpism, or is it more along the lines of Ronald Reagan's brand of republicanism, which emphasized many different things? What's the future for the Republican Party as a leader?
If we talk and can fix type of problems that we have, and this is nationally too. I mean, we have $32 trillion in debt. That's ridiculous. I think everyone in Washington should be coming to the table. They're on a spending spree. They need to cut back. I see that. I think it. I don't want to just say that Republican is Trumpism. I think that we really have our own. This is my core beliefs, that we can do better, be more efficient. And I believe that the majority of the Republican Party believes very similar to what I just talked about. Whether the former president wins again or doesn't win again, at some point in time, another person will come along and run. Ronald Reagan was great while he was there. We've had other good presidents. Both, I like our policies better. I think the Republican Party is going to become the Republican Party again.
Let's jump into another big issue, sex education, because there seems to be controversy surrounding sexual education standards in public schools here in New Jersey. Just straightforward, what's your perspective on this topic?
I've seen some of the curriculum, and we're putting a lot of pressure on young kids with some of this stuff way too early. I mean, it is just some of the things I didn't know until I was out of high school. I know I'm old, but I think they're going down a path that's not fair. I think parents, this is parental responsibility to teach children about these sensitive topics at the rate that their child is ready to hear it. Not every child is, we all mature in different ways at different times in our life. Some emotional, physical, some are bigger than others. But the point is, I don't think that every child or any child at some of these tender young ages should be exposed to that stuff at all. I think it's just putting too much pressure on them.
Should there, as the follow-up, should parents be allowed to withdraw their...
From that class?
From that class.
Absolutely, but then they weave the curriculum into other classes.
Let me ask just a follow-up, and I had this similar conversation with Jack Cettarelli when he was here, and I just wanted to, because he also said, yes, no, parents should be able to withdraw their student from this, but in terms of a sex education class. Does that apply to should that standard apply to other classes? Should parents be allowed to take their kid out of a history class if they don't like the way or what history is being taught? Should they be allowed to take them out of a science class if they don't?
That's
Or does it not apply?
It's just a total different thing. You're talking about, we all, again, if you're not ready, I mean, history is not something that's going to psychologically affect anybody. This is something that could really affect a young person. I think this stuff to push this on young children is putting far too much pressure on them, and it's going to confuse, intentionally designed to confuse.
I want to talk about small business, obviously something that you've been involved with throughout your career in public service. Driving through most downtown business districts, you see a stream of help wanted signs. Small employers are reporting extreme difficulty in finding qualified employees. So, two-part question here. What's the cause? Why are small businesses having such a struggle finding people when we know there are people who are ready to work? And secondly, what can Trenton do to address this ongoing issue?
There was a big discussion about minimum wages, and frankly, the people who are at those minimum wage levels aren't living any better now than they did before at the old minimum wages. And minimum wage is not meant to be a living wage. It's meant to be either a starting or a young person in high school or college or even a senior my age that wants something to do. I get paid minimum wage to do this job. Want something to do to keep themselves occupied and moving at it, when they get a little older. I say that tongue in cheek, by the way. I think it started with the pandemic, and maybe some of it is people are still a little afraid. I mean, COVID's going to be with us, and it's still out there. People get it. And some people react to that and maybe don't want to go out. And there was a lot of money that was put out on the street during COVID, and maybe people got too used to it. It's there's some lack. I mean, when I was young, I was hungry. I wanted to get ahead. I wanted to work and hustle, and and do it the way we should do it. It's what America was built on. We were competitive. You worked hard. You ran. You got up early. You worked late. We're losing some of that, and that's not good. It's slowly slipping away from us. What we learned. The fundamental thing to be an American, to live free. So if you work hard, you make some more, so you can live better, have a better quality of life. And if you're smart enough and you really make something that breaks big, then have it swiped from you from the government because you make money. There's a lot of things going on that create that loss of drive and that whole. I don't want to call it hunger because. My father used to say he was hungry. He'd come up. My father grew up poor on a good day, not middle class on a good day, poor on a good day, and he just passed away about a month ago. And he worked and worked and worked and worked, sacrificed, saved, and did it the American way. Where is the American way? What is it now? How are you going to define that? I wouldn't be staying home, man. I'd be working. If I didn't have a job, I'd be on Main Street helping somebody do something.
So what can Trenton do about this problem, this worker shortage we find, especially for small businesses?
Are people collecting unemployment and shouldn't? Then we should be checking cases. I mean, how can people stay home and not work? I don't know. So what can we do? Make sure people are legitimately collecting and not just finding a way to get around the system. And I'm being as frank here as I can. Years ago, people would come to us looking for work. I wouldn't want to start my business today like when I was 21 years old. I don't know if I could do it. It's just things have changed. We're losing that fundamental thing that made people excel.
Tonight we gather at one of our state's top research universities. And one question that was submitted had to do with the cost of higher education. Now, the Murphy administration has made it a priority to reduce the cost of education, in part by providing free tuition for some students. Do you think this is a good idea? And if not, what do you think needs to be done to make college more affordable?
Well, we have competition in the marketplace now with the community colleges. The first 2 years really can get that all the basic classes covered, and that's been helping kind of, because a lot more kids, depending on the economy too, have been going their first 2 years there. If people really need help to go to college, we don't oppose that. To be helpful from the state, because we want people in the workforce. We want people trained and ready to go to work. But not just to college. I mean, you guys are all in college, but there's also a lot of work in manufacturing that are paying really good. There's trades that the trade unions are fabulous with their training programs. There's so many things that people can do today. Other than try to go in and manage a college and cut the costs, but then you need to be able to pay the professors too. So it's a tough issue. But if people can't afford, I think we're doing the right thing, helping them out. But there are other options. College is not for everybody. By the way, I don't have a full college degree. I have college, but I have a lot of technical skills. And, I can run a business. I learned how to operate a computer out of the books in 1987. So there's ways to make it. But I don't suggest anyone not finish their college degree under any circumstances. It seems like you're pretty focused.
One local issue that came up was about the Glassboro-Camden light rail line. Many in this area have high hopes for creating and establishing the Glassboro to Camden light rail line. Do you see this as being a priority for anybody who's not from South Jersey?
I don't know, and I don't even know what the ridership looks like. Have they done? They must have done some market studies. I don't know enough about it. It's the first time I'm hearing about it, honestly, because I'm pretty far away. I know other light rail systems have had kind of lackluster ridership fare box recovery rates. So if they're going to do it, hopefully it's done in such a way that people use it and it's effective. Otherwise, you're going to have it subsidized by government, and it's kind of another program that gets added to the group of programs that already exist that are putting pressure on the system. So, but I'm not going to speak to it totally because I don't know enough about it.
A couple more that we want to sort of touch on here. This one gets to the budget, which you touched on obviously a bit. But the governor's about to propose the next fiscal year's budget in a few weeks. And he has said, Governor Phil Murphy has said publicly several times, he will not raise taxes in his second term. Now, you've been the budget officer for the Republican caucus. You understand the state budget as well as anyone. Do you think keeping this pledge is even possible, given the uncertainties in our economy?
I think he raised taxes so much that it's probably easy to do. I mean, when you raise spending $16 billion in 5 years on a $34 billion budget, and you raise enough taxes to do that, it should be easily attainable goal not to raise taxes. He should be looking for ways to adjust tax rates to make a better economy in New Jersey.
We had a couple questions by young Republicans, self-described conservatives, here at Rowan, who asked along these lines, is there any hope for them in New Jersey? Or should they just move to a more Republican-friendly state after graduation to pursue their political ambitions?
We're becoming a more Republican-friendly state because people are realizing that 22 years in one direction has not been working, and they're making switches. Who would have thought that 3rd District would have done what it did without one dime from any, like the state GOP, us? We had no idea. I mean, that was going on. A week before, we heard we might win one assembly seat. But people on their own are waking up. Don't give up. We're gonna keep going until we find sanity here. Stay in New Jersey. I know it's difficult, but you're the future. You guys are the future. I don't know if I'm talking to the person who asked the question, but hopefully you're here. I don't like giving. I don't give up on anything. I think we're going in a direction, but I think people are coming to the conclusion they're making the right choice, and we may see this trend continue. I'll tell you what, if you look at the board list that we have now for the last 13 months, we used to have sessions with 120, 140 bills. Now we're having sessions with 40 bills. Today was 42. We did 40 of them, I think, or 39. They are slowing things down because they realized that they were just doing anything, and people caught up with them. People made the decision here in 3.
One of the second to last question here, just it was about disagreeing without being disagreeable. Why do you believe civility seems to have disappeared from public discourse? You have talked about, I respect these people, we disagree, we're fine, but most folks looking at politics feel that it's very different than that. So what has happened that civility seems to have disappeared from public discourse, and how can we restore it?
Well, I think we see more of the federal government on TV than we do the state government or the counties or local. I think the closer you are to your constituency, the more people remember that we're people. You know, we're no different than anybody else. I'm just a regular person that happens to be crazy enough to keep running for office. I can tell you in New Jersey, we have disagreements. There's some pretty spirited debate, but I don't see anyone that really doesn't. I don't want to use this in the wrong way. How can I say it? I don't want to say hate. I don't see anybody that really has this vitriol out in the corridor or before the session. We're walking around talking to each other, D's and R's. Again, this is me speaking here. It is it's the issues that are debated. It's the business of the state that we don't agree with, how it's operating. But the people I know, I mean, Ed, I saw you talking to Zwicker a couple of weeks ago about a bill that he signed on for you, which, you know, I mean, that's real life people. Just Ed's a regular guy, and Zwicker's like this really smart guy that works for Princeton, you know. I forget what he does, but so I mean, I don't see it, but maybe I'm real close to it. But if you watch some of the rhetoric, sometimes it sounds like it, but it should never, you know, kind of get to the point where it's personal. It's issue.
We always conclude these evenings with one question. What do you know now that you wish you knew when you were their age?
I would put money in the stock market when I was your age. That's for sure. Every dime I had, and keep adding to it. Oh, I know a lot of things. You know, you think I can tell you this. I can remember sitting in the audience when I was 23 and I wanted to run for council. Thought I had a list of like 10 things that I thought we could do to make the town better. So I made it. And at first meeting, I'm sitting there, and I go, "What am I going to do now?" So we got some things done, and there's always a new list that comes along with something, other things that need to be done. So things change. And one thing, if I've learned anything, people fear change more than anything. If you talk about doing any kind of change, we talked about merging towns, people just get nervous about going outside of their norms. So there's a few things, there's a lot of things I've learned. Listen, I've been around a lot of smart people, and I've been in the room with a lot of people that are a lot smarter than I am, but I sometimes just shut up and listen. I'm so blessed to have been exposed to as many people as I have in my years.
On that note, let us give a round of applause for Leader DiMaio for a wonderful, insightful conversation. I appreciate your honesty, sir, on all of these things. I want to thank everybody here for coming out tonight. We are going to have several more programs throughout the spring, including next week, exactly 1 week from tonight. The State Treasurer, Liz Moyo, will be here. And, of course, the RIPAC Gala on March 10th. We hope you can join us again. Until then, everybody have a safe trip home. Thank you.